I'm very pleased this evening to have the opportunity to introduce to you Mr. Osama Sibliani, who is editor and publisher of the Arab American News in Dearborn, just outside of Detroit, Michigan. Osama has been a friend to me for a number of years. I first became acquainted with him when he was inducted into the Journalism Hall of Fame in Michigan, and I invited him to speak at the university where I was then serving as a party chair. And since then, I've had occasion to visit with him at the Arab American News in Dearborn and bring some visiting journalists to meet with him and interview him. So I'm very pleased to have him here this evening to participate in this Hearst Visiting Lecture Series on diversity in contemporary media. Osama is somebody who came to this country from Lebanon in the 1970s and pursued a bachelor's degree in engineering at the University of Detroit. He then became involved in publishing by starting the Arab American News some 31 years ago, first of all in Troy, and then moving to Dearborn. So the rest is history, and on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Osama to tell you more about the Arab American News and to discuss for you what he has done in the meantime and his perspectives on coverage of Arab Americans in the media. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you very much. Good evening. Do you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you? Good evening. First of all, thank you, Maria. And I know that I have met so many professors and deans and associate deans of journalism as a lecturer around the country. I have never met someone nicer and smarter than Maria. And if she asked me to come again, I will come again. When I went to Central Michigan, it's a long drive, by the way. It's like 2.5 or 3 hours. I didn't mind, and I would do it again if she was there. But since she left, I had a very good excuse not to go again. I was invited twice, and I couldn't do it. So Maria, thank you for inviting me, and we've had a very good day today. We talked to so many students about diversity in the newsroom and in the media. And it's always my pleasure, really, to speak to university students, because I believe that university students are, the people who are going to make the changes in our society. This is where everything originates. This is where everything starts, at campus. And once we start ignoring what happens at campus, then our country starts falling back and losing steam and interest and of course, leadership. So I truly believe that what you do here is very important, and when I engage people at the university level, in campuses, I get energized myself and I learn too. I look in your eyes and I see the future of our country. And let me tell you, if I look through the eyes of some of the people who are in the leadership position in our country today, I get very depressed. And I think that we're not doing well. But I think the future is brighter, because I think the universities are coming back to play their roles in the academic level, to bring the issues that are important to our country back to campuses, to start talking about them and originate some discussion that makes sense. And one of the talks that we should be really exchanging opinions on is what's happening in our country today and how it's affecting the rest of the world. And we can't do that without having diverse views, because as you know, our country today, the United States, is not, even though that some people are trying to build walls around it, but we are a country that's leading, and leaders need to know what they are leading. So if we're leading the world, that we have to understand the world. And the way we understand the world, we are very lucky. We don't have to go too far. Because we have immigrants from all around the world. We are a nation of nations, nation of immigrants. And I was telling previous classes in different lectures that I was very blessed to come to the United States from a poor family. And when I was sent to the United States by my family, because they want me to stay away from trouble overseas. The country that I came from, Lebanon, was engaged in a civil war. And they had to sell everything that they owned in order to give me a ticket one way to arrive in Detroit with $185 in my pocket. $185 and one-way ticket. And I was supposed to go and start working immediately. I arrived on December 28th. I was on the job January 1st, parking cars, which I did not drive. I did not know how to drive, so I was parking cars. I had to learn how to park cars and also deliver pizza in places that I don't even know the area. And pumping gas in gas stations. So I was working 3 jobs in order to provide for my education and pay for it. And I was lucky because this is a great nation. And if you work hard and you focus and you're sincere, you will reach your goals. In 1984, I became a U.S. citizen. And the one who gave me the citizenship was Ronald Reagan, President Ronald Reagan. He came into Detroit and he gave me the citizenship in a ceremony that we were 120 people from 50 different countries around the world were being naturalized at the Cobo Hall in Detroit. It was October 24th, 1984. I was putting together the Arab American News at that time, the ideas and everything was set, the office was open, and I became a U.S. citizen. What did Ronald Reagan say at that time? It was very important and encouraging to me. He said that, looked at us from 50 different nations being naturalized, and he said, we do not want you to forget where you came from. We want you to bring in your culture and your heritage and enrich our nation. Isn't that diversity? That's diversity. The President of the United States at that time was seeing that diversity is an asset to our nation. This is how we grow, this is how we become a powerful nation, because we tap into the resources of the world while we are in our nation. And we try to understand the world better. However, after that, many things have happened that put our country in a mode, unfortunately, of isolating our nation and our people from the rest of the world. And what is the purpose of doing this other than controlling events in this country? I do not see, because it doesn't really benefit our nation not to tap into the resources of the diverse community that we have around our country. Like, for example, I was fighting very, very hard in the towns that I put the paper in Dearborn, Detroit area, to keep the bilingual education. The bilingual education was costing $5 million a year. $5 million to have a bilingual education in the district where we have about 18 schools and about 20,000 children going to school. They want to cancel the bilingual education because they want people to speak English. You are in this country, you speak English. We do not want people speaking Arabic, Hispanic, anything else. We want them to speak English. And I said at that time, not only keep the bilingual education, and they keep the $5 million, investment. Increase it, double it, make it 10 million, and increase bilingual education, because we are a nation of immigrants, and one day, we need to understand Chinese, Japanese, and because we have to communicate with the rest of the world. I'm talking about like 25 years ago. I had to fight over this. We kept it. September 11 came. The FBI, the CIA, the Defense Department, the Army, the National Guard, the police, every organizations in our community, every department in our nation, from the State Department all the way, they needed someone to speak Arabic. All of a sudden, we had the urge in here that we have to, urgency, that we need to have some people to communicate with the rest of the world, because we had a crisis in the Middle East. So they tapped into the bilingual program that I defended and I protected, and I raised sometimes the money in order to put in it. People do not see that diversity is important to our nation, because we are leading. The same thing applies in journalism industry, and that is really where diversity should be exercised the most, and it's very sensitive to have a diverse newsroom. I'm going to give one example that happened most recently in the Detroit area. I spoke about this earlier, and there are many examples, but I'm going to take this example and try to engage you on it. 4 weeks ago, the Detroit News, which is a major publication in Detroit, it's 180 years old, put a story out about the FBI flying surveillance plane, not only in Metro Detroit, but in 11 other states. But in particular, the story was focusing on flying a plane over the Metro Detroit area, including a city called Dearborn, Michigan. And for you that, of course, do not know the demographic in that area, Dearborn, Michigan is on the outskirts of Detroit, and it has about 100,000 in its population. 50% of its population are Arab Americans. This is where the Arab American News is headquartered, in Dearborn. So the Detroit News says the FBI surveillance plane, in the headlines, flying over Metro Detroit, zeroing in on Dearborn. In the body of the article, the focus was that the plane was flying probably about like 25 or 30 miles in a radius, and passed over Dearborn, the lower part of the city, where actually the population of Arab Americans about like 5 or 6%. The majority of the Arab American community lives on the above the level or the line that the plane was flying. But the Detroit News put it on a headline, zeroing in on Dearborn. Why? Because Dearborn has 50% Arabs, 50% Muslims of its population, and therefore we have terrorists there, and the FBI is surveilling this community, right? They did not say it, but in the text, in the article, it was spelled out that flying over Dearborn, and by the way, Dearborn has 50% Arabs and 50% Muslims. 6 o'clock in the morning, they start calling me from the community. Why are they doing this? Now our kids cannot go to school, they cannot go and play in the park, our women cannot go and shop, they're accusing us of being terrorists. And that came also before. I will tell you about what happened earlier, because what happened earlier has a lot to do with what happened in that article. The same newspaper broke a story that a online a company called Intercept, it's a website. They wrote a story about classifying Dearborn as the second city in the United States with people that's connected to terrorism. after New York. Now, second city in the United States? Are you serious? The whole city is 100,000. New York, how much? Like 4 million. You're saying that 4 million, they are number one, and the 100,000 is number two. Why? Because there are Arabs and Muslims there. So every Arab and Muslim is a terrorist? This is how they classify? Detroit News put them in the headline. Created a storm in the media. Everybody from television, radios, took it that Dearborn, a nest of terrorists, and the FBI is following the terrorists in Dearborn. Well, if the headline was an FBI surveillance plane over Metro Detroit, flying over Metro Detroit, it would not have been really a story, right? But Dearborn, zeroing in on Dearborn, it means that it is an Arab and Muslim terrorist. In fact, after I received so many phone calls, I called the FBI, special agent in charge, and we had a frank conversation that our community is very concerned and they're scared. And what are you doing? What are you looking for? I mean, can we help? We wanted to. Tell me. He said, actually, we were helping the police following a fugitive. So we had a press conference that day, the head of the FBI, the congressional delegation from Michigan, 2-3 members of the Congress, in our office, and we said to the American public, to our neighbors, you don't have anything to worry about, actually. This is the FBI is saying, they're no terrorists, there is no threat right now for our society from Dearborn. 1 week later, I called the publisher of the Detroit News for a meeting, and he brought in his managing editor. And I asked why. He said, well, they flew over Dearborn a couple of times. And I said, well, but they flew all over, the town, and they circled, Lincoln Park and the South Gate and the area in Taylor, and they went Port Huron, they went to West Bloomfield. Why did you pick Dearborn? I said, well, I don't know. Well, the police in Dearborn did not know that the plane was circling over Dearborn. But other areas, the police were notified because they were following the fugitives. So after the conversation with him, said, I see how it was misunderstood. And I don't understand why we put Dearborn in. I thought that Dearborn was the focus of the investigation. If there were really diversity in the newsroom, they would have addressed this question there. Not created this controversy and put our community in a very awkward position. But this is the kind of thing that we need in the newsroom. You cannot just walk into a newsroom and look and see that does not represent the community that it serves. It's like police officers. It's like when you go into a police station and in Dearborn, like for example in Dearborn, we're 50% of the city, right? 50%. We have 3 police officers. 3. I mean, I'm not asking for a quota. I'm not saying that we should have 50% of the police force, which is like about 210. 50%, 105 should be Arab Americans. But it would be nice to walk into a police station and see people who look like you. There's supposed to be a community policing, not an occupation army. So you're supposed to be meeting people who look like you. This is how diverse society works. It's not like, that I need to dominate you and to dictate the terms and conditions to you because you are a subhuman. You are a second-class citizen. We don't have in this country second-class citizens. Or do we? We don't. So I think we should start always, when we think about us joining journalism industry, the journalism industry, and working with journalists, I think we should start asking about diversity. Because diversity enriches our organization, makes us better, understand each other better. And I'll tell you about my newspaper. I am a very small newspaper, comparing with the Detroit News or the Free Press or other publications, major publications. I'm only 31 years old. The paper, I'm a little bit older than that. But I have in my newsroom, and I challenge the media in Detroit, in the Metro Detroit area, that they do not match my newspaper in diversity. I have 18 people working for the paper, and they are from all walks of life as far as our community is concerned. We have Americans who are not Arabs, who have no connection to the Arab community whatsoever. Actually, our editor, one of our editors, is an American boy. We have women, men. We have Christians and Muslims. We have Iraqis, Palestinians, Syrian, Lebanese represented there, because I cannot sit there and make decisions on what to write and how to cover things with a community that's so diverse. And I'm talking about our community. It's a sub-community in the larger community. So what is the Free Press and the Detroit News doing? We're 600,000 in the Southeast Michigan. We don't have one reporter in the Free Press or the Detroit News. One reporter. How could you cover a community that large without having one reporter in the newsroom? I don't think that we should put a quota that we should have so many women, so many blacks, so many Hispanics, so many Arabs. But I think that we should pick people who are qualified, but diversify our newsroom in order to cover events properly and evenly. I can tell you, when I started the paper, and why I started the paper, and I should have started this at the beginning, but I'm going to close with it so I can take some questions and we have discussion in here. I'm an engineer. I went to University of Detroit and graduated in engineering. I wanted a shortcut to somewhere I can make money and support my family back home and do something in my life. And when I graduated from the engineering college from University of Detroit, I went to work for General Motors, and I didn't like it. It was boring, and I was so much ambition in me, and I wanted to be the president of GM the next month. And I waited 6 months, it didn't work, so I quit. I quit engineering, and I went into a private consulting. And I landed a job. I was very lucky. I landed a job as a vice president of an international company. And I grew with the company, and I made tons of money. A lot of money. And once I made the first 100,000, I flew to Lebanon. And I took my mother. She was old, and I was, the youngest among 11 children. And she was exhausted and tired, poor. So I built her a house, and I furnished the house, and I gave her everything she wants. And I decided that every time I travel around the world, I traveled a lot. Every month I traveled, 1 month in the air, 1 month on the ground. I visit my mom for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours in Beirut, and then I leave. When I come back, I visit her, and then I take off back to the state. In 1982, I was there in June 5, coming from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, on a trip. And I arrived in the morning, and I started, I was reading, the war, smell of war is all over, between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And the war area was Lebanon. So I told my mother, I said, listen, I just can't stay here, because if I'm afraid that if the war starts, I may get stuck in Lebanon. I can't, my business and stuff like that, so I have to leave. I'm going to the airport. So I took off, went to the airport. My flight to Paris was the last flight that left Beirut International Airport. After that, it was closed. And I saw the Israeli jets bombing on the outskirts of Beirut and destroying homes and properties. I went to Paris for 3 days. I don't speak French or understand French. And it took me some time, not like these days, there is no internet, no cable, no satellites, nothing. The newspapers were coming like 1 day or 2 days after the fact. I was at the Intercontinental Hotel. 3 days later, I took a flight to Detroit. And once I arrived in Detroit, I was told that the house that I built for my mom and the furniture and everything that I spent was totally destroyed by a rocket that was fired by the Israeli jets. I took it personal. Because after that, I saw people, justifying the war on television, on ABC and NBC and CBS. And there was no representation of our point of view. Where is our point of view? Where is my point of view? Why the war is justified? Why a country like Lebanon, it's an independent nation, that's beautiful, that sits on the Mediterranean, that's open to society, that's democratic, relatively speaking, to the surrounding. Why would a nation, another country, come and occupy its capital and destroy its infrastructure like this? And then we see the media justifying all of this. Okay, if you want to have a debate, why can't we be around the table to discuss, to give our point of view? Maybe the American public will be enriched in the discussion. That is the same discussion that we did not have, my dear friends, when we invaded Iraq as a nation. There was no substance in the discussion. If you pose the war on Iraq, you are not patriotic, and you are not American, and you don't deserve a seat and a microphone, because you do not support the war. You do not support our troops. I would support my troops and the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. And I would say, stay home. We don't have to fight this war. This is not a very justified war. This is a war that based on lies. I appeared on television. I had the debate. Bill O'Reilly and CNN with Larry King, and you could go to the archives and see. And I told them that this is the wrong war. This is a war that's going to destroy a country and hurt our nation and our credibility. And we're not going to be able to settle it. Go back, read history, you will understand why. So that is why in 1982, when I came back and I saw the injustice, and the injustice that's been inflicted on the Palestinians, I said, somebody has to stand up, somebody has to really say, okay, I wanted to say something contrary to what you are saying, but I want the American people to hear it. And that is why I started the Arab American News. But I don't think that it's fair for our country and for the rest of the communities not to be represented. I was successful, relatively speaking, in bringing the issues to the forefront. Since I started the paper, appeared on all the national networks. In fact, the international networks. Every country around the world, from Japan to China to Sweden to everybody, that I've been interviewed. I've, expressed my views in Germany, in France, in England, in the Arab world. I express the views of the community that I represent. Even when I go overseas to the Arab world, I talk about the Arab American community in the American perspective of how they see the Arab world. So we have a seat right now around the table, and we express our views, and we wanted to engage in a discussion. But not every community has this kind of opportunities. And I think that major newspapers and outlets, if they do not diversify their newsroom, they are digging their own grave. Sooner or later, they will see their demise. I want to tell you the last example that I've had experience with in my professional life as a journalist. We had a problem with the Detroit News like 20 years ago. At that time, the publisher of the Detroit News was Mark Silverman. He was a very nice guy. I'm sure you remember him. We had a problem. The coverage of the Detroit News was very nasty when it comes to Arabs and discrimination. They use words that they are very insulting. So I called Mark Silverman and I said, can we have a discussion? And he said, yeah, of course, sure. Why don't you come to the Detroit News? We'll have the managing editors and all the editors and stuff like that. Fine, wonderful. I'm talking to you about the good old days when the Detroit News was a powerful newspaper. They had like thousands of workers and stuff like this. So I walked into the meeting and Mr. Silverman chairing the meeting, and we started talking about, why don't you just be a little more flexible in coverage with the Arab community and the Palestinian issue and foreign policy, and give us some chance to write some op-eds. He looked at me and he said, Mr. Sibliani, this is the Detroit News. This is a policy that's been entrenched. And in order for us to change, we can't change like this. We have to change very, very slowly. I looked at him and I said, Mr. Silverman, if you do not change like this, you're not going to have a chance to change. You're not going to exist. Because things are changing, the world is changing. And you cannot stay the same. Well, they stayed the same. And today, everybody is talking that we cannot have two newspapers dailies in Michigan. The Detroit News has to go. So we're going to see right now the Detroit News is just going and fading away. Or maybe the Detroit Free Press, I don't know. But most likely the Detroit News. So if you do not change, if you are not current on the world's affairs and the communities level, if you're not trying to reach out, because America is changing. Look at the census. Study it. America is changing. Lincoln, Nebraska is changing. You will see the change coming. Changing. We're not the same country that we used to be years ago, decade ago. And the next decade is going to be different. More minorities are going to rise. Today, the statistic shows that Asians have far exceeded Latinos in the census. So we are changing. We are a country that's on the move. Anyone who's resisting the change and not including other people in their fold, they will falter and they will disappear. I'll take some questions. Come on, you must have some questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is your newspapers, is it bilingual?
Bilingual?
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's Arabic and English. The Arabic starts from right to left. You write Arabic from right to left, and the English is from left to right. So we have 2 front pages. That's extra work, by the way. And we have actually 2 papers, one in Arabic and one in English, but they meet in the middle. And we are not ambiguous. We don't speak from both sides of our mouth, Whatever we write in Arabic, we match in English. So when I was nominated for the Journalism Hall of Fame, Abraham Foxman, the head of the ADL, who is a pro-Zionist and Israeli, fired press releases attacking me and saying, close the doors, in the face of Mr. Sibliani because he supports terrorists. I don't support any terrorists. I believe that, terrorism is a question mark and we really need to examine it, but that's a different subject. I will come back and talk about it. He failed. He failed, because I'm not a terrorist. I love this country. I just told you. I came in with $185. What this country gave me, no other country, including Lebanon, would give me. In fact, no other country in the world that I could do, that could give me the opportunity that the United States afforded me. So I love this country. But loving the country doesn't mean raising the flag and waving it and singing Hail to the Chief. We need to start looking, very deep in issues that is affecting our country and the world. And in the Arabic section of the paper, the editorial, we take the same position. And when Abraham Foxman attacked me, they went and opened a website under the ADL, and they took the editorial in English, and they took the editorial in Arabic, and they translated the Arabic. And the English was stronger than the Arabic on the positions when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian struggle. I don't hide the fact that I support Palestinians. And I accept the other side if they want to support the Israelis. But I invite them to a discussion with you, and you to listen and make up your mind. Can't muzzle people, can't stifle the debate. Can't throw labels terrorism just to shut us out and shut us up. No, we need to create a discussion in here on what is really happening around the world. Why we're seeing today what we're seeing in the Middle East. Who created this mess? Who's responsible to clean it? Why the American taxpayers have to always pay for the mistakes that of our policies? Because we do not examine policies before we implement them. There are no debate. Newsrooms are controlled by special interests. If you go into journalism, you're going to be working for a major newspaper. Well, these days, what is the major newspaper? Your Facebook. Facebook broke more stories this year than any other major publication in the country. Most of the important issues that was brought up this year, if you go back, they were brought up by Facebook. So I went too far from your question. I love to talk.
Is it a daily newspaper?
No, we're weekly. We're weekly. Actually, if we have a internet, we can show some of the paper, to the public. If we go to the site www.arabamericannews.com, and we can have a flip, pages. Every week we put our paper on the web, and it's read by a lot of people. We have a very good website, both in Arabic and English, and we break stories over the weekend. We are weekly, but we continue to break stories, and during the weekdays. From the day we publish to the day we put the paper again to press. ArabAmericanNews.com. Here we go. This is the website. This is the website of the paper, and that's the English site. And then if you go to this tab right here, the one in Arabic, and then you will see that it's a very similar, actually a copy of the English. You can go all the way down there. We have all tabs. We have one about Michigan, one about the United States, one about Detroit, one about the election, one about Obama. Every week we have a page in Arabic, not in English, talking about Obama and what he has done, the highlights of his activities that week. Because we wanted to acclimate the Arab community who are coming in new to the area of what kind of government we have. So we have Detroit, we have culture and arts, we have health and fitness, we have money and business, we have sports, and also we have crossword puzzles and pictures and stuff like this. Discover the differences between pictures and trying to get people to relax a little bit. But that's in the Arabic. The English is pretty much the same, not as detailed, because we're not going to be able to cover Detroit the way the Free Press and the Detroit News covering Detroit. However, we cover Detroit from our own perspective, how we see the city moving from the bankruptcy. We do cover Detroit, but we do not cover Detroit the way the Free Press and the Detroit News cover Detroit. We talk about a lot of stuff, as you see, like local and last weekend we had visitors with carrying a weapon demonstrating against Sharia law in Dearborn. There is no Sharia law in Dearborn. The people who really think that there's a Sharia law in Dearborn is Ben Carson and Donald Trump. And I don't know why they think this way. We have across the street from my office a strip club. I go there, the steak is very good. So I don't know where they say that there's a Sharia club, we have mosque, but we have, bars, and I have in my office, all kinds of blue label and red label and black label and all the labels, my own label. So there is no Sharia law. It only exists in the mind of some idiots, and they're trying to market and scare the American public. So we try to say that, why don't you come and visit? You can have some hookah and eat some falafel and hummus, and probably you'll mess up your mustache if you eat hummus. But that's all what you're gonna do in Dearborn. There is no Sharia law. No one is gonna make you pray 5 times. I don't. And we write editorials every week. Like we're Americans like you. We have the same feelings. We're affected by the same thing. If our schools are not good, it doesn't mean that the Arabs are going to get preferential treatment. If the schools are not good, they're not good for Americans and Arabs and non-Arabs, Hispanics, Latinos, whoever is attending the school. It's no good. So we have common interest. And no one wants to Islamicize America. America is not a country that can be taken lightly. We have laws, we have constitution, we have Supreme Court, we have a Congress, we have the executive branch. It's not easy to manipulate America and make it a joke. Like tomorrow the Muslims are going to come and take over and change the laws and put us under the niqab, and the hijab and all this stuff. My wife will kill me if I even think like this. We have bottles of wines that are coming out of our ears in the house. So, who says that all the Muslims are like this? They dress like this? It's not true. Go and visit. You will see. Even in the Arab world, they're not like this. There are people like this, but not everybody is like this. And if you dress in a niqab or a hijab, that doesn't make you, it makes you different, but not strange. Because people have their own culture and their own tradition, and they believe in their own belief. And that, as long as they do not infringe on your culture and your belief, it's okay. But the minute that they start forcing their culture on you is the problem. But pretending that there is a group there that they are trying to take America, hijack America, and make it an Islamic state is just propaganda that is meaningless and that has no substance, no legs whatsoever. I don't know if I can bring this something in here. Can I? Here is a, I don't know if you have this, oh, you don't have a plug-in. Well, anyway, this is a, each copy of our paper is right here. And you will see that this is the most recent copy, and it says 1548, this is the issue number, and that's the date that issued. And all these issues, the previous issues, and then you can click on them and you can flip through the paper and read actually the entire paper in Arabic and in English online. Yes?
What are your views and your stance on American patriotism and nationalism and how that's sort of affected the way we accept diversity?
Well, in fact, you know, this is a very good question because, you know, patriotism, you know, is not really, doesn't have anything to do actually with language. It doesn't have to do anything to do with the way you look, you know, whether you're short or tall. Patriotism is how you view your own country, you know. People who wanted the United States to be a society for the white, these are not patriotic. These people are supremacists, you know. They think that this is their own country, they discovered the United States, and this is how it is. And you and I do not belong here. These are not patriots. These are idiots. Now, patriotism is how you protect your country from danger. I do not want my country to go and fight. I want to prevent my country from fighting. But I do not want to put my country in jeopardy just because it's weak. We do not want to fight because we are strong. And the strongest don't have to fire. This is patriotism. What's wrong with that? Do I have to prove that I am patriotic because I speak good English? I have accent, and you don't have an accent, so you're more patriotic than me? Who said that? What do we measure? How do we measure patriotism? I tell you, I measure patriotism in loving your country and trying to do the best you can to support everyone lives in your country, and try to include everybody and try to understand the kind of country we live in and the kind of world that we're living in. Because unfortunately, people are trying to isolate us from the rest of the world. They can't. We are not going to be isolated. We are leading, we are in the leadership position, and we need to understand the world. And we have to accept that we cannot make everybody think and act like us. Because we're different. We in this room are different. But we're still civil, and we can exchange opinions, and we can talk about things. And if we have to fight, there is ways that has been organized for us and inscripted for us to follow in order to do our fighting. Ballot box, in a protest, an op-ed, speaking on the microphone, raising your voices in campuses, changing things civilly, but not by force and by gunboat. This is not how we change opinions. This is how we wreak havoc in the rest of the world. And that's what we exactly did in Syria. And that's what exactly we did in Iraq. We bear the responsibility of destroying these nations. And now the refugees are flooding everywhere. And because they're running from death and destruction, and we're saying we're going to be picking and choosing. Who are we going to pick to bring to this country? Well, I agree. Listen, I believe that the refugee crisis is a very serious crisis to look at. I'm not against bringing in refugees. Poor, uneducated, educated, and rich. But we have to know the kind of refugees we're bringing in. I'm not talking about the color of the skin, how much they have in the bank. I'm looking at, I do not want ISIS to infiltrate our communities and destroy the fabric of our societies. Because those animals exist. You see them. They are dangerous. So I don't want them in here. So if you are going to bring in refugees, most of the time you try to do it in a way where, you know, the government that is existing there work with you on the names and the files and the history of because each one has a file, a history. So we want to make sure, to the best of our abilities, that we're bringing in people who are not dangerous or who does not have a criminal background. But where do you check these things if you do not talk to the government? Because we don't talk to the government, the Syrian government. We want Assad out. If we want Assad out, who do we want in? We don't know. Fuzzy politics. I can't understand it. I can't understand, for example, yesterday, the day before yesterday, the president said, okay, well, we're going to stop training the so-called opposition because it's not working. Because we spent like $500 million of your money and my money training 12 people only. There are no opposition. There are ISIS. That's what they said 2 days ago. Yesterday, they were throwing 50 tons of ammunition to the opposition. Hello? You just said that there are no opposition. There are ISIS. So you're throwing ammunition to ISIS to fight the Russians? What kind of politics is this? What kind of policies is this? How are we winning in this war? And what kind of a chaotic situation are we creating? Who is debating this? Did you hear it on CNN, Fox News, or did you read it in the paper? Nobody is debating these issues. These issues need to be debated. And I hope and I pray and I know the only way that it can be debated is on campuses. And things will change, because this is how we created the anti-Vietnam movement that set our country on a right path, at least for a few years. So we really need to re-examine our role as citizens, not only going to school and making the grade, but going to school and making a difference. Yes?
Given your vocal opposition to certain issues, do critics call your newspaper biased?
Who?
Critics?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, I can admit to you I'm biased. I'm biased in which way? In which way? In a way that I present the other point of view. I don't claim or pretend to be fair and balanced. I'm going to leave this to the Fox News. This is their motto, fair and balanced. I am fair and balanced when it comes to my community, to representing my community. But I will not pretend that I am, I am a newspaper that's competing with the local, mainstream media. I am supposed to complement the mainstream media. And if the mainstream media needs to research my community, they can come in and research my community in my paper. If they need an idea to be explored, we can explore it together. And we are doing this right now. We are at this stage after 31 years. But I do not pretend that I am a journalist according to the rules that has been engraved in journalism, that we write a story and we write it neutral, from a neutral position. There is nothing called neutral. The neutral, it doesn't have a taste, it doesn't have a smell, it doesn't exist. No one cares. If you are writing a story, you have to write it with passion. You have to be biased in the story. I'm telling you, if you don't have the passion, the guts in it that's stripping you when you're writing the story, your story is another story that's going to be printed on page 18. But if you are really writing a story, write it with all your emotion, put in it your emotion, your thinking, your bias. You know, if you're writing about a rape story, you're not going to be sitting there and giving a chance to the rapist. You are not in the court in here. You are writing something that you are experiencing on behalf of the victim. So you write it with passion. Now, many people disagree with this, but I can tell you, in actuality, most of the journalists are biased because we are biased. We like different colors. We like different perfume. We like different food. You know, we have an opinion on everything. If you look at it, half tuna fish sandwich, there is an opinion there. So we are biased. However, we claim that we do not put our bias in publications, which is I totally disagree, and I think that the bias is there. So I am biased. Yes, sir.
Islamophobia is still being present as shown by the recent day of global unity or something like that, protests in front of mosques. How do you think that Islamophobia in the United States and the xenophobia and all that, and the association with over 1 billion people, such small groups such as ISIS, that's still rampant and present in today's media, how do you think we will be able to eliminate that association that's still being pumped out at us through the media? Do you think it will take time? Do you think it's something we can actively fight?
Well, Islamophobia is a movement that is well financed and organized, supported by religious fundamentalists and media outlets. It's a money-making business, and at the same time, it generates a lot of income from people who are misguided. And Islamophobia is a product that's sellable. The climate is very good for the product. The market is conducive, you know, like you can sell Islamophobia because it's packaged well, and you scare the people. Like I said, you know, like Islam are coming into the United States to take over. I mean, you know, some people who are silly, they may believe this, but when you come really to investigate this and to research it, that is something that's impossible to happen. Impossible. The idea of ISIS is helping a great deal. It's lending a great help to the Islamophobic in this country, because they are taking an example of Muslim world to show this is the kind of Islam that you're going to have in America, which is, it's not true. That's not true, because the Muslim world is not like this. Look in Indonesia, which is the biggest Muslim nation in the world. This is not happening. Of course, there are extremists in every nation. Don't we have extremists in here? What about this person that walked in the other day and shot people and killed them in college? We have crazy people everywhere. Now, that is not justifying the mass killing that's happening in the Middle East. But I wanted to explain to you and to others that this is a school of thought in the Middle East. It is not something that I will brush and say, put it behind, don't worry about it. There are a few outlaws. No. This is a school of thought that has been supported, unfortunately, by our government, funded and protected by the USA and our agencies. If you go back and you see the kind of operations that has been conducted in the region, you would know that we have hands in all of this. From Afghanistan, fighting the Soviets and bringing in Osama bin Laden to be a player, to what's happening today in ISIS. And frankly, I disagree with our relationship with the Saudis. Not with the people of the Saudi Arabia, but with the kingdom as the government. I do not believe that we should be allies. I don't think that we should give them a preferential treatment. I think that a government like this that does not respect the woman and their society and does not respect and tolerate other religion to practice religion in their nation and don't respect their own people, and 25% of their population are living under poverty and they are the richest in the world. I do not want to call these people my friend. I'm not talking about the people, I'm talking about the government, the king and his brothers and sisters and everybody around him. I think that we should rise above it, and I think we should be very selective of who are our friends and our strategic allies. And because of this preferential treatment that we've given to the Saudis, and for their thoughts of extremism, we're seeing today ISIS born on the fringes of Islam. But because think, with me, please help me out. Where do these people get their money? I mean, you and I know that in order for us to live, we need some kind of support. Either have to work, or the cars, the gas, the food, the ammunition, the training, the logistics. Where are they bringing the money from? Where is the weapon is coming from? Who is really supplying them with all of this? Where is this coming from? I mean, this is not a few people who have decided to go on their own. This is an organized group that well funded and well trained, and they're killers. And they don't tolerate you and me. It's not, they're not killing only Christians, they're killing Muslims more than Christian. And why are we standing on the, how come our country is not involved? Okay, I'm against sending troops. But if we engage with an airstrike, how come our airstrikes are not precision? They're not precise and they are not really on the target. Why the Russians walked in and they have made a significant impact in the last 4 or 5 days that would force us to drop 50 tons of ammunition to them to help them out? What have we been doing? Why our policy is this? And what is our policy end game? What are we trying to accomplish there? Because frankly, I don't know. I'm asking, I don't know. And unfortunately, there is no clear answer. I speak to senators, I spoke to the president, I spoke to the Secretary of State. There is no end game. They tell you we don't know. We don't know what's happening in Syria. This is not an answer from a great nation. We were involved. So we can't just say we don't know what's happening in Iraq. Iraq is the second largest producer of oil, and also have the second largest reservoir of oil in the region, in the world. Do you know that the Iraqi people don't have clean water to drink? They don't have 24-hour electricity. They don't have medical, hospitals, and they don't have schools. They don't have roads. How could you justify 2003 invasion? We're talking about 12 years. 12 years after you invaded the nation, you destroyed the country and you left it in shambles. And how come there is no person to claim responsibility for all of this? And what are the billions of dollars that they took from us taxpayers in order to build Iraq and build the democracy or invent democracy in Iraq? A bunch of liars. But there is no accountability. And that's where I come back and I say, forget about the media, it's not going to happen. But it might happen on campuses. People start raising the question, why? Why are we taken for? Why the American people have to put up with so much abuse? I was reading the other day and I was telling Maria, your dean and my good friend, that, American students pay in a year $50 billion interest on their loans. That's the interest on the loan. 50 billion, that's not a number that I brought from my pocket. I brought from the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. Dig it out and you'll find I'm telling you the truth. $50 billion in interest a year. You students pay $50 billion in interest on your loans. Where's this money going? And why our students have to be put on such a huge burden? And why are we taking the money and destroying other nations? Why? Who's benefiting from this? If we're benefiting from it, I can understand. I just don't see it. Please help me. Yes, sir. Mr. McCoy. My good friend from Detroit.
Mr. Sibliani, you have had the opportunity as the head of the Arab American News to meet with a number of Middle Eastern leaders over your tenure. Among them, the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. Regime now that the American government would like to see deposed, a regime now that is being backed by the Russians, a regime that has been accused of war crimes, as has been the case with ISIS, who opposes that regime inside Syria. So if you were to give advice or counsel in the past to the current administration of this country, what advice would you give them about handling that situation?
You know, I've been asked, and I think we live in a different age, that revolutions are no longer the way to go. You know, like going in, destroying everything, trying to build it from scratch. It costs too much money and too much lives, and sometimes it doesn't work. Most of the time it doesn't work. I believe in evolution. I believe that taking something that is bad, making it not good, and then later on fair, and then maybe good later. Trying to work through the process of improving a regime. First of all, yes, I met Bashar al-Assad, and most of the leaders of the Arab world I met. And I don't support a regime that is not based on democratically elected government. But that doesn't exist in the Middle East, you know. And the democracy is not a pill that you take or a shot that you take and you become democratic all of a sudden. It's a process, it's a culture that you have to raise. And it takes generations after generation in order to build this kind of, you know, structure of democracy. Remember, we were, you know, who we were before, you know. Texas style, shooting and killing people on spot. I mean, we were not born democratic and civilized. I mean, people take time in order to change their way of governing. I am totally against going in and removing a government the way that we did in Iraq and the way that we're demanding to happen in Syria. I think that it's a perfect example of failure, Iraq. You want to see what's going to happen to Syria if Assad is gone? Look at what happened in Iraq. 12 years of chaotic situation, and the situation is getting worse and worse by the day. Bashar al-Assad and Saddam Hussein, they built a country, they provided services to their nation. They were dictators, yes. But the schools were free, you get medical treatment for free, you drink clean water, you know, you have security in the country. You walk in the middle of the night, you know, secured and safe. Yes, there is a problem, and a major problem in human rights and actually in the way that we understand democracy. But isn't it better than what we have right now? A lawless society. The people who are extremists and killers, they are out of the closet and they are, you know, destroying and killing and butchering people and opening their chest and eating their heart. If the alternative is this, no, I don't want it. I want Bashar al-Assad to remain. But if the alternative is better, show me. I always tell the administration, for the last 4 years, we've had opposition, Syrian oppositions coming forward, right? Show me one person that is qualified to sit in Assad's seat and exercise leadership so I can bow to and I say, okay, I'm going to support you. Show me his agenda. What is he made of? What's his credibility? What's his resume? I can tell you, and I am not biased, I don't give a damn about Bashar al-Assad or anybody. There was no one that can match the qualification of Bashar al-Assad to sit in his place. But can we nurture someone? can we move on a process where the change comes in gradual change? I support this. I believe this can be done. And we can preserve the country. Right now, in order to repair the damage that has been done to Syria, you need about $200 billion at least. And there are things that you cannot replace, like the artifacts, the history that these animals have destroyed, you know, in Syria, which goes to the bones of our culture and our existence. I mean, you know, what does Palmyra have to do with being a Muslim or a Christian or a Ba'athist or pro-Assad? Or you're destroying a stone, a history, the Arc de Triomphe, you know, all these history that goes 5,000 years back. They are destroying it. For what? These people I want to put in charge. These are the people who are we're dropping, you know, tons of ammunitions to. Who are we supporting? I mean, I want an alternative that I can live with, that I can accept, that is better than the status quo. And so far, the Saudis, the Qataris, and the Turkish are not able to provide us with anything but worse examples and worse people than what we have in the region. And why the United States cannot just put their foot on the ground and say, well, you know what? Okay, I wanted to change Bashar al-Assad. I don't want Bashar al-Assad to be in government, but I am going to take him right now over what I see on the ground, and I wanted to change things gradually. And we have to have the integrity as a nation to sometimes say we made a mistake. Maybe we should take a couple steps back before we move forward again. And I think that our nation is too arrogant. Our leaders are too arrogant, you know, to say, look, we made a mistake. We made a call, very quick call, and things are changing in the region. And according to this, we need to change our strategy. But there is no strategy. You ask senators, U.S. senators, Secretary of State, there is no strategy. There is no clear vision of what's happening in the area. And that is very sad. I saw one person raising hand. No? We have time. We still have 15 minutes, yes.
You mentioned that you were born in half Arab and half non-Arab. Within two groups get along, is there any tensions?
Tensions?
Within the community, is it like divided by sections of the town?
No. No, there are no tension, but at the beginning, when I started the paper back in 1984, there was tension, and it was based on stereotypical images that people have seen, you know, disseminated through Hollywood. And frankly, you know, many Arabs have hated themselves because the way that we have been portrayed in the media, you know, so they changed their names. Muhammad became Mike, and Talal became Lee, you know, and Ahmed became Tim, and Maryam became Mimi, whatever, you know, and they changed their name. But later, after, you know, the paper came out and we launched a campaign that be proud of who you are, and started, you know, giving good examples of who Arab Americans, Khalil Gibran, you know, and Spencer Abraham, and people in the White House like Eleanor Roosevelt, and you know, all these people who've served our country, some generals in the army and the Marines, and some actors like you know, like and radio hosts like Casey Kasem and other people in this series called Mesh. I can't remember the name of them. These are Arab Americans who came here and who have given to the country, you know, and people started, you know, being introduced to the culture. And frankly, you know, we have a very rich culture, the Arab world, and we're a very generous community. So if you go to our community, to Dearborn, and you visit restaurants, stuff like this, they're very generous, very hospitable, misunderstood yet, but they keep trying to improve, you know, their image. But there is a campaign that is organized to distort our image, and we're always on the run trying to fix the damage. And what's happening overseas is not really helping us, because our kids, they see this, and they can't defend it. They just can't defend it. And other kids see it and they launch an offense against them and say, look, your culture, your religion. And you know how kids goes in school back and forth, so we have fights all the time, breaking and misunderstanding. But we try as much as we can to go into schools and talk to the kids, because this is where really the grassroots work should be focused on schools. In Dearborn, there are about 20,000 students in schools. 13,000 of them are Arab Americans, and the rest are none. So there is a large contingent of Arab students in the schools, and we try, I go in and I speak to the elementaries, to the secondary schools, and we try to lecture, we try to bring communities together and try to, and we do talk to the Arab community and say, you're living here, you should start recognizing some changes, and you need to adapt to them, So we criticize our community when they do something wrong. In our paper, we launch criticism, we write editorials that are very critical of our community and the leadership of our community if they do anything wrong that we believe that should not be done, and it might hurt our image or the United States. So there has been an underlining, animosity that was built before we came into Dearborn and established the paper. And I don't know if you know the history of Dearborn. Dearborn is, historically speaking, was run by a mayor who, his name is Orville Hubbard. He governed Dearborn 36 years, and he was very, very racist man, up front. And he used to say, go kill an nigger in Detroit and drag him into Dearborn. He used to say it publicly. We have him on record, radios and stuff like this. So he was very racist. And what happened is they built a statue for him in front of the city hall. And we launched an effort, and I led this effort as well as other leaders to remove the statue because it represents, anti-black and a racist history of Dearborn. And we were successful. 2-3 weeks ago, we removed the bust, from in front of the city, and they put him in a museum. But he was removed from in front of the city and the street as a symbol of racism. So there is a history of racism in Dearborn that was carried out, with the Arab community, and now it's fading. But definitely we have issues. Anybody else? Any question that crosses your mind that you wanted to ask and you are embarrassed to ask it, or you are afraid that you're going to embarrass me, go ahead and do it.
I have one question. During 9/11, as you started your paper in 1984, do you feel you put a lot of this onto 9/11
On what?
in terms of what happened in with the Twin Towers and how they, do you feel that made a difference to how people perceive?
My paper made a difference?
No, what I'm saying, your paper itself, did you see a difference with editorial and all this content changing because of what happened in 9/11 or not?
Yeah, well, 9/11 turned the table on us, and really it put us in a very difficult position. On 9/11, I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I went to work. That day on September 11, there was a election, primary election. And there were several Arab Americans running for positions in the city and the other cities surrounding Dearborn. And I was supporting, and in my capacity as the publisher, I was running the paper, but I had another hat, which is I was the president of the Arab American Political Action Committee, which is the political engine of the Arab community. And I was one of the founders, and at that time I was the president. I was the president only for 2 years because people, did not want to take the position during that sensitive time. So at 6 o'clock I was touring, I left my house in West Bloomfield about 30 minutes away from Dearborn, and I came to start, putting people on the polls and then send reporters to cover, the election. And all of a sudden, things changed during the day, and people who are non-Arabs were coming in to the polls and say, I'm not going to vote for an Arab today, And Osama bin Laden surprised all of us, including me and everybody else in the business of politics and newspaper. Frankly, I will say this to you honestly and truthfully, I did not even know who Osama bin Laden was before September 11th. Do you believe that? I did not even know that this person existed. That's how far away we were from Osama bin Laden and all his clan. I knew bin Laden's, I knew his brothers, I knew the family because I dealt with them in Saudi. They're still right now. Actually, if you remember a few weeks ago, there was an accident in Mecca where I think a crane or something fell and killed like 100 or 200 people just before the pilgrims, season. And the company that this crane belongs to is the Bin Laden. They are a multi-billion-dollar company in Saudi Arabia that still exists and take huge contracts. And his brothers, Omar bin Laden, is the head of the company. And they are multi-billion-dollar, continue to exist, and they are the biggest contractor in Saudi Arabia, our friends. So that day, our lives changed totally for no reason. We have nothing to do with it. I remember, I was talking to the previous classes that I had an assistant. She was my assistant and executive secretary. That she is 100% Arab American, had nothing to do with the Arab community. Her name is Danielle Smith. She collapsed that day because of the phone calls that we received. We received hundreds and thousands of phone calls threatening, terrible, horrible, and our system broke down, jammed, and they were threatening me, my family. They want to kill me. They want to chop my heads off. We're gonna do it tonight. We know where you live. We know your wife, your kids. I don't have any kids, but so she couldn't take it. She collapsed. And she went into the hospital, and she never came back to work. She stayed in the hospital for several months, being treated in mental illness because she was driven crazy that day. And it wasn't easy because I still until now have the tapes of the phone calls that I received. It was beyond your imagination. The criminal attitude and the language that was, and that night they caught 3 people in front of my office, and I was there, and I was almost very close to talk to them because I forgot. I was like, they asked me, "Are you a patriot? Are you patriotic? Hey, Sibliani, are you patriotic?" So I was talking to them. And 9 police cars surrounded me. Back off, and stuff like that on the ground. And they picked them up. And they had 3 knives. They almost, cut my throat. And they went to jail and served some time in jail. And after that, a flood of phone calls of hates that swamped our community. People were fired from their jobs because they are Muslim. People who were spit on in the supermarket because they wear hijab and because they are Arabs. And our community went through hell. And it was a very difficult time. But I really, truly believe in the spirit, in the American spirit. I truly believe in it. And I truly believe that people, once they know the truth, they change, you know. So I went on Tom Brokaw, Nightly News on NBC, and I told Tom, I said, I wanted to address the American public. And I looked on the camera and I said, you know, my name is Osama Sibliani, not Osama bin Laden. I am an American citizen. I love this country. I came here by choice. Why are you treating me like I'm a criminal? I have nothing to do with September 11. I was victimized like everybody else, shocked and saddened by what happened. Why I am being hit twice? Once by Osama bin Laden, another time by ignorant people who claim that I am Osama bin Laden, or assuming that I am Osama bin Laden. So when is this madness going to stop? And immediately after that, a flood of phone calls, positive. People who were veterans were saying, "Oh, we're going to put our, military suit and come and stand in front of your home, protect you, and you are a great Americans," and all this stuff. The whole discussion changed because this is how the media should operate. They should give a chance for people to stand up and tell how they feel. And most of my speeches after September 11, I was very emotional about what happened, because I know people died on September 11. I know them personally. They were visiting in New York and they were doing business and they died. And I have been there before. I could have been there. But I think what happened on September 11 was taken out of proportion and was used and abused by so many people around this country in order to reach their goals. And their goals is not to make our country safe. Really. I'm not all of them. I know that there are people who are very sincere about our nation and the safety of our nation, and I support being secured and being cautious. But for us to surrender our rights and be humiliated like this, we need to stop this. We need to stop being afraid of nothing. Why do we have to take our shoes off every time we have to go to the airport? Why do we have to take our belts? What's in our belt? For God's sake. I mean, can't they see they have the most sophisticated equipment? They will see from Google. Google it, for God's sake, you will see me right now. So why are we being treated like criminals at the airports? You know, all of us. Take your shoes, take your pants, go through a system that strip you naked, you know. What kind of security are we providing for our nation? And how far are we willing to go? And is this really making us safe? I mean, these are questions that needs to be discussed, and the best place to discuss them is right here. Is right here. I don't believe that this is making us any safer. It's certainly making us a very paranoid nation. Like yesterday, I wanted to come, to Nebraska. I got up, went to the airport, and I got to the security, and the security line, it's just unbelievable. I mean, we spent like 45 minutes waiting in line because people were taking their shoes, their glasses, their pants, and stripped naked, And we have one TSA agent attending to all this crowd. So I said, why don't you bring another TSA agent in order to help? Clear the situation. So anyway, they brought another TSA agent, and we were able, after 45 minutes wait, to get through security. By the time I get to the gate, the plane had already taken off. I lost my flight. I missed my flight, right? So I called Nicole, and I said, Nicole, I'm sorry, I missed my flight. You may have to make some different kind of arrangements for me to be picked up at the airport. This is the kind of harassment that's unnecessary. I went 2.5 hours before my flight, and I couldn't get on my flight. Not because of anything I did, because the system is screwed up. It's not working. And then they stand in the middle and they say, you can apply for the TSA preferred status. Why do I have to be applying for a TSA preferred? Don't I pay for my ticket? I've been a citizen pay my taxes. I behave. God knows. Ask my wife, my sister, my neighbors. Why do I have to apply for a TSA preferred status? I am an American citizen. Treat me like one. Why do we have to have a pre-approved? Why do we have to take our shoes? What's in our shoes? Really, what's in our shoes? What is so? I tell you, frankly, I know the answers, and people may laugh. They really are not interested in our shoes. They're interested in humiliating us, in making sure that we are controlled. Shut up. Go to school, borrow the money, pay interest on them, stay for the rest of your life paying, so you don't have to ask questions, so you don't have to stand up and say why I am paying all of this. I'm asking you to stand up and say, no, we're not going to do this. Let's talk about everything. Let's talk about everything, including why I am paying so much interest on my loan, why other people in other nations are going to school for free and are going to colleges for free, and they pay less taxes than me. Why? Why Bashar al-Assad pumps out doctors, medical doctors? You know how much they pay to graduate from Damascus Medical School? $185. That's how much they pay, registration. They come to this country and they make $500,000 a year as doctors. While our doctors who graduate from our medical schools here, they graduate with $500,000 in debt. Because this is how much it costs to go to medical school. And they stay for the rest of their life paying for this with interest and penalties and all this stuff. Why? Why Bashar al-Assad is teaching his people for free and we wanted to kill him and destroy his country? And why are we charging our people so much in order to go to college and get an education? It's a question that I would leave right here for you to discuss. We're a great nation, right? We have billions and billions. We're helping. God knows how much we're helping around the world. Maybe we should start helping our own. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm a rebel. Thank you. Maybe I want to take a picture with all of you guys. Come on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Appreciate it.
Maria, let's take a picture with anyone who wants to take a picture.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Can you take a picture?
Have questions or?
Oh no, I was just thanking him for his.
I'll take a picture for you if you like.
Yeah. Here. She's gonna take a picture. Okay. Beautiful. Come on. With the rest of the crowd right here.
Sure.
And behind us, the pictures of nice. No. Come on in.
Cover up the stain on my.
Where are the professors? Where's Mr. McCoy left?
Where is he gone?
Probably took a bathroom break.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Do one more. All right.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here you go, Mr. Spaulding.
I'm sure you took some pictures we can share.
My grandfather's name was Chaharli Zahur.
Jahur, are you from Iraq or?
He was from Syria, and my grandmother was Hilwe Asif Hadid. And I love hearing your accent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Is there any way I could ask you a couple questions?
Yeah, sure.
Put it for a newscast for tomorrow?
Sure.
Can I get the mic from you?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
I was going to take it home.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Got it.